Hello and welcome to You Are Enough Summit for Women. My name is Pia Prana Muggerud and I'm your host. And today I am super excited. I am beyond excited to be interviewing my very good friend Sonia Samtani, who we've known each other, I think, for about 17 years, if my calculations are correct.
Yes.
And I think we have pretty much been through anything you can possibly imagine in a friendship. Perhaps no break in the friendship. That's maybe the only thing. And this is not the first time we have collaborated together. And back in 2004, 2005, Sonia and I, we were working on a team called the Must Team for Tony Robbins, and I'm sure many of you listening will know who Tony Robbins is. And we got to we went to London, we went to Mumbai, we went to Sydney, and we even lived together as we were working as mentors for Tony. So I'm thrilled that now this gives us another opportunity, although shorter, to collaborate on this summit. So really thrilled that you're here. And the topic of today's talk is the power of acceptance. So of course we're really delving deep into the topic of you are enough and worthiness. So I think this could be a super valuable insight into that whole topic. But before we get there, Sonia, I just want to say introduce Sonia a little bit. You know, she's got so many qualifications. You know, I got her bio, and of course I know so many of these qualifications, but it was just like, okay, I can't mention all of these, but over the years, you know, you've really honed your skills in so many different areas to be able to offer your unique gifts in the way that you work with people. And so you're the founder and director of All About You Center, where it's not just you practicing, but I know you have a number of practitioners there. And your main focus is hypnotherapy. And I know recently you also completed certified transpersonal regression therapy
Yes.
and even NLP, and you can teach all of the above. So not only are you working with people, but you're really from a therapeutic perspective, but you're also supporting other individuals who would like to offer the same kind of work that you do. And I know that a lot of the work that you do, you can really get in there and successfully eradicate anything from past traumas or stresses or limiting beliefs or phobias or addictions. I mean, all those things and many more I know that you've worked on and successfully eradicated for your customers. So I'm super excited to delve deeper into this topic of the power of acceptance with you, Son.
Thank you. And thank you for that beautiful introduction. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, great. So I'm going to start with my signature question, and that is, so for you, Sonia, what is your personal self-worth story?
Yeah, I love this question. And, I feel like with most practitioners and me, of course, that we are our first and most ongoing client. So my self-worth story is the story that I have been working on most and continuing to work on. So, if we go back to the beginning, I started off as a child that I would say was more happy go lucky. And then around the age of 6, I had a brother who was born with some congenital disorders, which kept him in the hospital for the first 5 years of his life. And that was a huge shift for our whole family. And of course, a huge shift for me. And as a result of what happened, the family environment changed. And as a result of that, my personal interpretation was I'm not wanted. So my I'm not wanted became one of the core issues that I was dealing with. As a result, I was very shy. I managed to cope with it by needing external validation to ask people to validate that I wanted. So I started to please others, do things to prove that I am worthy, that I am valid. And this all continued until I was in university, where I came across a book called Life is Fair. And I became really obsessed with this book because I wanted to know, how is life fair? Where is the fairness? And show it to me. And I remember the cover of this book, it was black and white, and it was really talking about yin and yang. And it was talking about accepting the dark and the light parts of life. And I don't think I understood how profound it was at that time, but I did understand that I have a choice to interpret. And that was huge for me. So that gave me an insight that I have a say and I am not the victim of circumstances. Of course, we know that now. Back then, that was my first insight. And since then, I did a lot of personal development courses. Of course, as you mentioned, we worked together for Tony Robbins. I did the Landmark Forum. I then came across hypnotherapy. And when I came across hypnotherapy, what it had me do is to go back in time to the moments where I decided that I'm not wanted, to why I decided that. What did I interpret? What was the incident? And give me choice, not as the adult of today, but as the child of yesterday, to reinterpret what happened through a different lens. And now I call that lens the lens of acceptance. So I can see what happened through the lens of acceptance, and that just changed my world. And it's an ongoing, continuous journey. So little by little, all I am doing is accepting what I have judged in the past. And this is when the change became so deep and so permanent, much more permanent than finding out a great coping strategy or a different way of dealing with what so. But now it's like, ooh, I'm not triggered in that way anymore. I can go to a networking place and I can see a bunch of people and, oh, my first instinct is not that I'm not wanted. I feel comfortable. I feel good here. And that then became my path. I became a hypnotherapist. I became a trainer. And since then, I've been going deeper and deeper and deeper into that work.
And I love it's like this sense of acceptance of how you had judged yourself in the past. But as we're talking about self-acceptance, the story you just shared to then being a two-time TED Talk participant. I don't know, actually know how, you have 2 TED Talks. I mean, that's quite a big leap that we're talking about, right? To be able to then stand on stage, stand tall, confident, and have that authority that it requires for something that, amazing to do. So inside of that, I wonder, how would you define self-acceptance? How do I know that I have it?
So I actually think that self-acceptance happens moment by moment. So it's not like a light switch where we have it and it's there or we don't. It's a choice that we make, a conscious choice every moment. And for me, acceptance is really the art of being with what is without judgment and being at peace with it. So this is what's so. Just breathe into that. That's it. It's not good, it's not bad, it's not right, it's not wrong. It just is. And how do we know that we have it? The byproduct of that is really feeling peaceful, feeling grounded, and feeling like I can be with both the crappy aspects of it and the aspects of it that I like. I can be with both. It's almost like you're collapsing duality. So it goes very deep, which is why I think this is a full circle back to my Life is Fair book, because so much of the work that I'm doing even now with acceptance is accepting the yin and yang, which essentially is the dark and the light.
So when you say collapsing, it's collapsing the light and the dark.
Yes. And so when you're collapsing the light and the dark, then none of them mean anything. They're not significant anymore.
And I suppose you could also argue, though, that the dark does also inform us. And it could be either if informs us that here's something we need to look at. But I also kind of like this idea that when we're in the dark, for example, the great analogy of when it's dark, that's the only time we can see the stars. And there's a gift in that as well.
Absolutely. I think part of collapsing the duality is really seeing the gift in both and
Mm.
really seeing the beauty in both. So, I often say that when we accept the dark, it becomes light. And when we judge the light, it becomes dark. And they're both there and they're both beautiful.
Mm.
And when we can look at both through the same lens of acceptance, then something very beautiful can come out of that. Something that actually takes us into oneness. And I think that this has been the thing that has helped me heal most in my life journey and what I do with clients. So basically, all that I do in any type of healing, whether it's hypnotherapy, past life healing, inner child healing, it's accepting the parts of ourselves that we have judged in the past.
And I mean, that's such a great outcome to be able to stop judging what stop judging ourselves and what we've done in the past. And at the same time, we're also living in this world where we're kind of programmed to judge and to say, this is okay, this is good, this is bad, this is beautiful, but this is not. And so I think we're also, and I'm sure that many of our listeners can relate to the fact that it's, I would think, this, what you're talking about, it takes something, because we're so used to having to, not just saying, well, dark is good, light is good. But instead it's like, no, this is bad, this is good. And therefore then that, when we mirror that into ourselves, it becomes very easy for us to judge ourselves and judge what we are not, or judge what we are that's seemingly ugly or not okay.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it is hard and it does take something. From a hypnotherapist perspective, we study the mind. And in our mind, we develop what we call a critical filter between the age of 0 and 8. And that critical filter is where we're exposed to duality. And we use duality to figure out life. Like we say, we learn through identification and association. So this is light, this is dark, this is wet, this is dry, this is up, this is down. And now we've got yin and yang and opposites. But through that, we're also getting this is good, this is bad. Now, the good and the bad is the judgment part of it. Otherwise, what we have is light and dark, up and down, wet and dry. And instead of kind of one is good and one is bad, or the other one is good or bad, it's like this is and this is. So when we are doing the healing, we still have duality, but we're not using good and bad to identify and associate with duality. We're kind of getting what it is with the mindfulness of it is. So that's what we're working to dispel. And as you said, it's not easy. And it's not easy because we formed this at the age of 8. And then it stays there like a brick, which grows and grows and grows. And we add more and more and more and more to it, which is why healing doesn't end. So let's say if I've got a wall of my filter that's this big, every time I heal an inner child, my filter's coming slightly lower, more acceptance, slightly lower, but I still have this. And this is all judgment.
Yeah. I think that is such a beautiful distinction. The fact that, we're holding on to good and bad, but like the dualities in the world, it's just, it is and it is. That's such a simple distinction.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
So,
the most powerful things are so simple, right?
yeah, I suppose. I suppose so what I wanted to explore a little bit more is that when you talk about self-acceptance, how does that directly impact and relate to self-worth? Because they're different in that they feel quite similar as well.
Yeah. For me, self-acceptance is basically the path that allows us to be enough. So if I just am, if something just is, then the way that it is needs to be enough if I accept it. So if I'm not saying it's good, if I'm not saying it's bad, it's not right, it's not wrong, I get that it is. I get that it has a place in this universe, and we all have a place in that universe. Then naturally, that means it's there for a purpose and it is enough. And so this is not being super worthy, because that's an overcompensation. It's not being more than enough, because I personally don't believe in that. It's not being under enough. It's just being with what's so. And that naturally leads us to knowing that, yeah, it is enough the way it is. It was designed that way.
It feels almost like a meditation. It is just so, and just being what is so without trying to change it or remove it or make a difference. It is so.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
So I'm just curious for our listeners, how, and if they're anything, if they're a human being, which they will be, or if anything like me, we are judging ourselves a lot. And I'm just wondering if you can shed light on like a self-acceptance one-on-one, where would you suggest that our listeners start? I mean, you've already been alluding to some, but it would be great to just be really give it a clear, this is step one, or this is one of the step ones that you can take.
Yeah, sure. And one of the step ones that I usually suggest is, let's start with what's going on right now. So right before going to bed, we can start by doing a daily review. So do a review on what life was like when you woke up in the morning, what happened throughout the day, and just as you're going to bed. And as you do that, just become very aware of emotions that you felt, that you're still feeling, that are not over. So these emotions that you are still feeling are usually not quote unquote positive, happy emotions, because when something feels good, we allow ourselves to feel the beginning, middle, and end, and it's over. But when something feels uncomfortable, it's like, oh, I'm angry. I don't want to be angry, so I'm going to store it inside. And then that anger is not over. So at night, when you're doing your review, if something is not over, you'll still feel it. And that is where you have not accepted something. So a great place to start with the review is just notice what's still there. Notice the judgments and the emotions that are still there. Once you become self-aware, you can begin to notice where in your body you're feeling it, because our body is like the physical mind. We've stored everything somewhere in the body. It's like what we call the somatic charge. And from wherever you stored it in your body and it's not over, start by taking deep breaths. And these breaths are not to say, oh, it's not a good feeling and I don't want it and let me chuck it away. It's not, that's judging it again. It's just allowing. So, okay, I'm going to breathe through the anger. And what that's doing is it's allowing the anger to have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and to come out through you like a wave. Because emotions are actually supposed to be waves. It's energy in motion. So it's coming out through you. And when you're doing that every night, you will begin to notice that living is very mindful and self-acceptance will come very naturally. So start by doing this for, I would say, just start even 10 days. Notice the difference. 21 days is a great first milestone, because everyone knows that 21 days is where it takes to create that neural pathway. 40 days is the next milestone, where it becomes the path of least resistance. And then the biggest milestone then is 90 days. So the daily review, acknowledging how you feel, breathing through it, is one of the great places we can start.
And so simple. And yet one thing that's coming up for me is I also wonder what your thoughts are about, well, our body and our emotions really speak to us, has its own language in terms of what's going on for us. So I just wonder, when you use the example of anger, and I'm just wondering, how do you view that, let's say that anger is also there to give us an indication of what's going on inside?
Yes, because every emotion is useful in some way. So when you're present to anger, again, you're accepting the anger. So you're present to it, you're accepting it, and then, as you said, the gifts of it are available too. And by doing so, again, the anger will go through its journey and it will end with you getting a learning out of it. If we are judging the anger, you're probably not seeing any gifts. And years later, you can think about the same event and still think, how could that happen? How dare she? How dare he? And that anger is still suppressed within. So
That's
yeah,
a
I
really
completely
nice
agree with you.
distinction.
Mm.
Sorry, there was a little bit of a gap in the sound there, but I just wanted to say that's a really nice distinction, because personally, I like to be able to have the emotion that's true for me. But what you're saying is that it lingers in us. If we said, and anger is a great example, right? Because anger, especially for us women, and when we were growing up, you know, good girls aren't angry, so that's quite a charged emotion anyway. But what you're saying is, I have my anger and I'm okay with that, and I can just watch it and be with it, and it is what it is. The moment I say, oh no, I'm angry, oh, that makes me a bad person, that's when
we're judging it. Yes.
okay.
Yeah, exactly. And when we are doing catharsis, this is something that I cleared up recently with some of my students. So the misconception can sometimes be, oh, the sadness and anger in healing and in therapy, we're breathing it out because it's not good to feel. That's actually not what we're doing when we're healing with acceptance. We're not breathing it out because it's not good to feel. We are breathing it out because we are feeling it, because we're feeling our truth. And it takes acceptance to feel our truth. And only when we feel our truth, we can move through what's there. And then the body doesn't need to store it. Because the only reason the body is storing it is because it's not over. And if it is over, the body can finally go through that experience and release it. So, one of the big things that we even do with the inner child healing and past life healing is we meet that younger version of us, or we meet our past life personality. We look at what they've been holding on to and we allow them to get that it is over. And that in itself is so like, freeing. Like, oh, I've been holding on to something for lives, or I've been holding on to something my grandfather did and he's no longer alive. It is over. And when it's over, then you can allow yourself to feel that anger and then kind of move through it.
And what you're sharing, you do during a hypnosis session.
Yes.
Okay.
Hypnotherapy or regression therapy.
Right. Because like I especially with let's say a stress response of something difficult that has happened in let's call it this lifetime, and it could be some sort of abuse or an attack or something that's been a trauma, and the body, even before perhaps even the brain gets involved, the body might start responding to, let's say that suddenly now my stress response has been triggered, and now I want to fight or flight, whatever it is in that moment. So it's in those moments, it's not the mind that's triggered, it's actually the body. So I suppose I'm curious, how do you work with that, with like the body keeping the score, and sometimes the body will come up and say, and communicate in ways that might not make sense to us in that moment.
Yeah, so a lot of times in my work, because of what you've shared, we do 3 types of catharsis. So there is mental catharsis, emotional catharsis, and physical catharsis. So in our minds, we store beliefs, like I'm not wanted as a belief. In our emotional body, we store our emotions, like my anger, my sadness. And in my physical body, I store the pain. So when we're actually moving through things and we're releasing trauma, it is from all 3 levels. And we allow the body to release whatever pain the body has been storing. We allow the emotions to finally come out. And usually that can happen hand in hand. A lot of times it does, and sometimes it doesn't. And both is okay. And as that is happening, even the beliefs that we have stored, like I'm not wanted, I'm not good enough, there's something wrong with me, all of that gets an outlet and it moves through you. And again, we're not telling you to move it through you because it's wrong. It's just that now that experience is over. I had it, I felt it fully, that experience is over, I'm allowing it to pass through. And that is really healing that through acceptance.
Hmm. And so are you saying that, let's say when somebody is having a session, that that's where you can take them in a place where they can actually physically release, like even the emotions are there and they
Yes.
express the emotion, or they're allowing the a movement of the body to release whatever is needing to release in the moment.
Oh, totally. We've had people like vibrating, we've had people throwing up. So the body will release however the body releases. So
Hmm.
there are some clients that the way they release is constantly they feel nauseous and I have a bin ready and they throw up and that's how they release it through the body.
Hmm.
With some, it's like a full body vibration and you can feel that reverberating. And so we allow it time until that stops. With some people, the movement is slightly less, and that's okay. Maybe they're releasing in other ways. So the physical sessions are beautiful. And along with that, if needed, we also do body touch if the client allows it and if
Hmm.
it's required, which means that if you are feeling it somewhere, at times I could even help you by tapping that spot, by moving the energy within and help you to breathe out what's stuck in there.
Hmm.
So that sometimes works.
Hmm. And it's so important, I think, for so many people to that touch when things are perhaps when they're going through something difficult, to actually feel the presence and the warmth of you, the person that's supporting them. I can imagine there's so much healing just in that.
Yeah. Oh, that's so true. Because if you're looking at us as human beings, right? As a human being, if we were not touched as a baby, we would not be alive today. So our body understands touch to be loved. Whether as a grown up we're introverted or extroverted, we like it or not, our body knows it because that's what kept us alive and that's what gave us love when we were babies.
Yeah, and I suppose as we become adults, um, I don't know, I noticed that we touch less and less. Of course, unless we have children and we're hugging our children, or we have a beloved that we. But I think there's so much healing to be done that is possible through, like, even if you were to have a session and you're just holding somebody's hand. Or I know for myself there was working with David, you know well, Sonia, because you initiated that relationship, but working with an ex-therapist of mine. And I remember there was a time when he just held me
Hmm.
and he allowed me to feel what I was feeling, and he just held me, and that touch, that was really so important in that moment, to kind of feel that nurturing and um yeah, that holding was very special. So even if there's just, like you said, you put the hand on their heart, or even just a gentle tapping.
Yeah,
Ah.
it makes such a difference. And you know, what you shared is so beautiful, being held. And in that experience, I would also translate it back to acceptance because you're being held. And it's like, this is how you are, this is the way you are, and just breathe and allow.
Hmm.
And it's through that holding of where you are, through that accepting of where you are, that movement can happen. And you moved through that so beautifully.
Yeah. And I'm curious, what are your thoughts about, from your perspective, and you come in from many different angles, but what prevents us from feeling enough? What gets in the
I
way?
would take that back to the critical filter that I spoke about earlier. So, what prevents us is when we're introduced to duality, we are also introduced to the good and the bad. Whereas duality is a part of earth.
Hmm.
So, we're not going to be free from duality. We're going to have it. And when we judge as yes, no, good, bad, approve, disapprove, that's what takes us away from being enough. That's what takes us away from just being, and then we're judging when we're not enough. And in fact, this is, you know what, when we talk about core issues. So we develop our core issue mostly, from my experience, even when we're in the mother's womb. because that could be the first time where we're in this environment, something happens, we make an interpretation that there's something wrong with me, because the critical filter starts at age 0, which is the womb. So something wrong with me is a judgment. It's starting to form there. Then it becomes bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until we have this wall, and this wall prevents us from being enough. So on the other side of the wall is I'm enough. Then there is a wall of judgment. And on this side of the wall is all the coping mechanisms that we do to try and prove that we are enough, which we are anyway. That's the core.
And so when imagine I was pregnant, and I've never been pregnant, but as a woman being pregnant, and I'm feeling really, one day, for example, I'm feeling really depressed, or another day I might be crying and inconsolable, or I might just be thinking things that are perhaps not kind towards myself. And so because the fetus is a part of my system, we are one. Is that how one way that I can either even, or my child, even at age 0, can make that decision, or make that interpretation that I'm not okay or I'm not enough?
Yes. And the child, as you said, is inside you. So whatever mom is feeling, child picks up. And I want to give a disclaimer here, because I don't want moms to be like, oh, that means everything I did at that time, my child is picked up and my child is so messed up and it's all my fault. Because again, duality is inevitable. So it is not possible for moms to be positive 100% of the time. It's not. That's why we're not talking about positive thinking. We're talking about acceptance. And acceptance allows for negative thinking, which is part of duality. So if moms are feeling the way that they feel, and if mom is sad and she's accepting that she's sad, then she will be at peace with her sadness. And if she's angry, she's accepting she's angry, she'll be at peace with her anger. And then baby will experience that peace too. So it's not about this, unsurmountable expectation that we have to be good and at peak state all the time. It's about really being realistic, and we're going to be like this. And if you're pregnant, even more so. But yes, to kind of go back to what you were saying, the baby does pick up everything.
And I suppose, even if I go back to my example of me being pregnant, my child is with me, and it could even be something that is even outside of me, like I have an experience that is traumatic or difficult, and I might be okay in that moment, but then something happens on the outside, and that will also have an impact on my unborn baby.
Yeah, it can, very much so. The good news is also babies are extremely suggestible. So as much as they can pick up your trauma or your shock or you thinking things are not okay, the next moment, if you go, oh, it's okay, and this is about me and it's not about you, and I love you, my little child, the baby's picking that up too. And now the baby is neutralized again. So again, the baby's suggestibility is something that we can use. And the misconception is usually that they don't know anything. What do they know? We can do anything in front of the baby, or when we're pregnant. Newborn babies get exposed to lots of things because we think they don't know any better. Whereas that is the most suggestible stage, 0 to 8, where they're picking up everything like a sponge, much more than when they're 8, because when they're 8, they've already decided through their judgment. They've decided who they are. And if you say something to them that's against their own identity, they can say no. They can reject you. But when they're babies, they can't. So they're just picking up everything.
And that just makes me think of seeing all those mothers, or pregnant mothers who so often, even when they're not necessarily showing much, but you see so often that they just instinctually will put their hand on their belly. Or I've seen women who maybe are in a crowded street, and they're, as we will know very well from our home city of Hong Kong, that when we can be bumped into, and this natural tendency to kind of just like what we talked about earlier, you might put a hand on your client's heart, and then the expected mother will just put that hand on her belly and connect, and even just soothe the unborn child that she's carrying.
Yes. And that's again, that's our association with love. That's our connection. It's so instinctual, right? And it's with us, and it's also with other species, like touching their babies and touching their young ones. That's just a way that our animal bodies experience love.
Animals as well.
There's so many animals. Like if you look at, when the egg hatches and the mother is like through the face or whatever, just hugging the young one, touching the young one. It's so instinctual.
Sorry, I see
It's
what.
like part of nurturing. Yeah.
Yeah, I misunderstood a little bit. And so actually, it's really getting into a habit of really being with what is in moment to moment.
Yes, that is exactly the message that I would love to spread. It's being with what. That is what acceptance is. The two big misconceptions that people have with acceptance is sometimes they think it's approval. If I accept means I have to think it's good or it's right. That's still judging. So it's not approval. And the other misconception is that, oh, it's resignation. What can I do? I have to accept. And that's not acceptance either. That's being helpless about it. So there's still judgment underneath that. So acceptance is really looking at something, as you said, and being with what that is, being with what's so, and being at peace.
Yeah, that was a really lovely distinction between acceptance and being resigned. Because I think, more and more, and we're living in a time where it could feel like there's so many things out of our control. Like when at the time of this recording, we're in the middle of COVID at the end of 2020, and so many restrictions happening, right? So many things that governments are putting in place, and I think more so than ever, it would be very easy to fall into a place of being resigned because, well, what can I do? It's COVID, or it's the government, or it's, my mother-in-law, or whatever it is on the outside that makes you think that, or makes me think that I don't have agency of what's going on inside for me.
Yes. And that's the resignation. And people think it's acceptance. And that's something that we can tell very easily. And the easiest way to tell is, how in charge do you feel? If you truly accept, you feel in charge. And if you are resigned and helpless, you're not in charge. There's a feeling of being defeated. So often people kind of disguise acceptance as resignation, whereas it's very easy to tell.
And I suppose, I mean, even just feeling into the word resignation, I can, even from a sort of somatic sense, it's like this collapse, rather than feeling more empowered and like I am at cause with my life and with what's going on in my life right now. There's a
Yes,
big
exactly.
in the body.
Yes. And the body is the greatest pendulum, I think. It's the greatest way to tell how we're actually feeling. So if we're feeling resigned, the body slumps down. If we're feeling in charge, then we're more upright. So when we're doing our daily review, how do we tell where we have an emotion that we're still carrying that's not working? It's exactly what you said. If it's making us feel sort of slouch, moving backwards, then our body isn't moving forward. Something is holding us back. And that something is usually a belief, an emotion, or a physical sensation that is not being expressed yet. It's something from the past that we're holding. And that's just something for us to look at. Whereas if we have released it, then we have choice. We have agency and charge. Yeah.
So I wonder what you might say to our listeners who who perhaps are stuck in that place of falling into being resigned a lot, thinking that, oh, I've accepted. So you've given us some thoughts around, some great insights that, okay, the body does speak, and if you can get more in tune with really listening here and not always going out. But I wonder if there's anything else you can add, because I can imagine, especially now, it feels like, it's so easy to fall even into victimhood. And I think victimhood and resignation, those two
Yeah.
things, they are quite closely related.
Yeah, and something that I practice myself, which I would also like to share, is if you do feel resigned and if you think about something and the body is naturally moving backwards, yes, so there is some helplessness, you're not in charge. And at that point, the easiest thing to do is just look within, and whatever is causing you to move backwards, just say to that, I see you, I acknowledge you, I witness you, I accept you, I love you. That's it. That is part of being with what's so. And that is so healing.
That again? Can you say that again, just so we can really just take that in? Because wow, that's easy for any of us to just kind of clock into those few sentences. So just say that slowly again, so everyone can really take those few, would you call them affirmations or?
Yeah, we can call them affirmations.
Mhm.
So tune into your body and tune into where in your body that somatic charge is, which is feeling resigned. And then say to that part, I see you. And really look. I acknowledge you. And feel as if you're acknowledging that part. I witness you. I accept you. And I love you.
Mm.
And if there's anything else you want to add, you can add. And just those words itself makes that part seen and accepted. And then you would naturally take a deep breath. And that deep breath will just be releasing whatever's been stuck.
And it just feels like something that anybody can do. You can either be sitting at your desk in an office, or your children can be running around doing their thing, and maybe you're even cooking in the kitchen, whatever your situation is.
Mm.
You can do this any moment when you check and you notice that something could perhaps be out of alignment, or something is needing to be communicated, or needing to be acknowledged.
Yes, absolutely. It's so simple and yet so powerful.
Hmm. And this, I suppose, could be another thing that any of us can do, like say for 10 days or 21 days or 40 days, to actually just stop, feel, and go, what's happening inside, and going through creating like that, almost like a mantra, or those affirmations.
Yes, totally. It's something I do till today every night. I review my day, I check my body, and that's what I say. And if
Hmm.
I feel like adding anything else, I add something else. And
Hmm.
if I feel like going deeper and addressing the root of where this started, if I'm identifying a belief, then I can do my deeper work, my inner child work. But this daily review is a beautiful tool, very easy to do, and you don't need to be a therapist.
Yeah.
Anybody can do it.
And something that just came up that I might add to my new practice would be to also just say thank you.
Yes.
Because like, even when something is going on and I don't maybe have a handle on what what is it, but I can go through that's my body, for example, telling me to pay attention
Mm.
on my journey of self-acceptance, and then going through those affirmations, and just thanking.
Yeah. And thank you is so beautiful because thank you opens up the lesson. It's almost like that thank you is opening up a different frame for us to see something else deeper and within. Pia, you here? Hello? Hi, honey. Has your time run out? I can see your screen is frozen. Okay, I guess we will be editing this part out.
Now.
It's beautiful that you said the word thank you, because with thank you, you're actually opening something up and you're looking at the learning of what's behind it. And you get access to what's the lesson, and then we can move on from there.
What a wonderful note to finish on, because our time is up. And to end this meeting, I would just like for you to tell everybody listening, where can they find you so they can have access to more of your magic?
Sure. So I have two websites. One is allaboutyoucenter.com. That's CENTRE, and soniasamtani.com. Those are the best places to find me.
Okay. And I also know that you have a gift for our listeners. Would you like to tell them a little bit about what that gift is?
Yes, so this is a personal meditation that I'm doing specially for you and this summit and all the listeners. And it's around self-acceptance, being enough. And it will have the affirmations that I spoke about earlier, about self-acknowledgement, seeing yourself, allowing you to be, and accepting who you are.
Wow, what an amazing way to almost like an extra resource to then embody everything that we've been talking about today. So beautiful. I know your meditations well, and I would highly recommend everybody to take Sonia up on her offer to receive this gift. So Sonia, thank you so much for taking the time, and not just taking the time here today, but also especially recording this beautiful meditation for all our listeners. Thank you
Thank you so
much.
much, Han. It's been such a beautiful, heartfelt interview. Thank you.
Yeah.
Lots of love to you.
And everybody else, we see you in the next interview. Be well. Bye for now.
Bye.